let's take a stroll downtown Florence. We're gonna paint this today, which is the Duomo, the dome with the baptistry and the the bell tower by Giotto. This is the finished painting, but we're gonna be talking about shadows today mostly, and we're gonna drag into this mix Leonardo da Vinci, who was the first one to define shadows and how to paint shadows on buildings. So Leonardo had this idea, and he put all of this in this book. This is it's called Treatise on Painting, and it's a giant volume. There's like 900 different definitions and how to paint, basically. And we're going to look up definition number 209, which says on the strength of shadows. And it says each window cornice or projection will cast a shadow proportion to the size of the light that strikes it and the distance from the wall. The farther the projection, the longer and softer the shadow. And I'm going to explain this because Leonardo spoke a very ancient Italian, and it was very difficult even for him to like put it in words that were understandable. But you have to imagine like this was done. He wrote this a long time ago, so it needs some explanation. Basically, what it means is that if you have something on a wall, it depends how much this thing is sticking out, that will be the length of the shadow. So in other words, if you have something small sticking out from a wall, then the shadow is going to be short. And if you have something longer sticking out from a wall, then the shadow is going to be longer. And then he also adds that the shadow is going to be softer if the source of the light is far away, and it's going to be very sharp if the source of the light is close by. Um, it's it's quite complex to understand, but it's actually how he saw shadows, and he in this book, the Trattato della Pittura, Leonardo calls shadow the brush of God, because the thing that gives form and its meaning to everything. So he wrote that light without shadow has no body, no life, for without darkness there is no shape to see, no mystery to seek. And he was right, because to Leonardo, shadow wasn't simply the absence of light, it was a presence, it was a living veil that revealed the true character of things. So he classified shadows with the precision of a scientist and the wonder of a poet, because he basically spoke of primary shadows. So those are the ones that are close to the objects, they're very dark and dense. And then secondary shadows, which are the ones that are they begin to return the light, and they're a little bit farther away from the object. And he even described something that's a reflected shadow, which is where light bounces from one surface to the other. And honestly, I don't even understand this one very well, but it's apparently there is a third shadow, and it illuminates the things that would otherwise remain unseen. So if you stand before the sunlit wall in Florence and see the shadow of a balcony, for example, or the bell tower, you can almost sense Leonardo whispering. And you need to observe not just the shape of the shadow, but the color of the light that fills the shadow. And he wrote that every shadow is tinted by the color of the light that creates it. So a wall lit by a golden sunlight casts warm shadow. Under the blue of the sky, the same wall turns cool and violet. So the painters of his time had drawn outlines, but Leonardo erased them, because he replaced hard lines with delicate transitions, what he called sfumato, and it's just like a smoky blending where light dies softly into darkness. He warned artists never to use pure black for shadows because in nature black does not exist. Although I'm using black here because we have a lot of light here, and it would not do its work properly. And Leonardo also observed how distance changes light. So, for example, mountains far away appear paler, not because they are lighter, but because air and moisture scatter the sunlight. And he called it's an aerial perspective, and it gave his landscape the depth of breathing worlds. They look real. And in his notebook, he wrote, "The painter of shadows paints the soul of things." So if you get the shadows right, you get the soul of the thing. And to paint a shadow correctly, he says, one must understand how light touches every surface, how the sun moves across the hours, how clouds filter color, how stone absorb and release warmth. And to paint the shadow is the meaning of time itself. So for Leonardo, the study of shadow was not just an artistic um, exercise, it was very spiritual, actually. So he believed that light and darkness are not enemies, but they are actually partners, and they can only live in this universe together. There's no there's no light without the shadow, and vice versa. Um, and this we can see if you look at the Mona Lisa by Leonardo. It's very well done there because, like Mona Lisa, the face of the woman doesn't have almost any hard lines. If you look at it real close, you can download pictures of the Mona Lisa somewhere, and you can look at it real close. There is almost no hard lines. Even the eyes that are typically seen as a very hard line, the eyes are not actually hard. Everything is very delicate, and the shadows just flow um, slowly as they should, as nature actually is. He was a very keen observer of nature. Um, I have no idea how he could possibly observe all of this and put it in words, but he wrote so many manuscripts and so many um, well, we call them books today, but back then they were not they were not actually published. Even the treatise on painting was published a long time after. I think it was around like 1500s. So it's after his death somebody published it. Um, Certainly not him. So the Basilica of Santa Maria del Fiore, that's the name of the church, um, is if you stand before it, you can almost hear the centuries because its walls are white and pink and green marble, and it changes the mood with the passing of the day. And at dawn, for example, the marble glows with a soft silver light. At noon, it turns so radiant, like in this picture that I'm painting. It's white, so it's really radiant. And by sunset, the pink marble deepens as if the stone was just like blushing. The whole construction of this church began in 1296 by Arnolfo di Cambio. He was the architect that first designed it, and this was the age of Dante Alighieri, the guy that wrote Inferno. So you might have heard about it, and it was supposed to be the larger and the greater, the most spiritual that any church in Tuscany was. And it was the declaration that Florence's soul was as mighty as its merchants and its artists. It was a declaration of mightiness. And it took nearly 150 years to complete the first stage because the facade was added later. But when Brunelleschi finally crowned it with its dome in the 15th century, Florence declared itself the beating heart of the Renaissance. If you step inside, there is light coming from the center, and it becomes cooler and quieter. It's quite bare inside, but very beautiful. It's not a like a Gothic church where it's there's lots of paintings and there's lots of ornaments. This one is before Gothic, so the vast inferior feels almost empty, and yet it really holds a profound stillness, as if the silence itself were the cathedral's most precious relic. So if you look up, Brunelleschi's dome soars above, and the painting with Vasari's fresco of the Last Judgment. That's like the biggest painting inside. And there's lots of angels, saints, and flames circling upward, like a vision seen through the fire and faith. It's quite stunning, actually. And when the sun filters through the lantern high above, it strikes some frescoes, um, and that moves very slowly across the figures during the day, and it's almost like a living painting. The cathedral is filled with optical marvels. There's something called the gnomon, and it's a tiny hole high in the dome through which sunlight passes at certain times of the year, and it projects a glowing disc on the floor. And for centuries, astronomers used to use it to measure the solstice, and it was the perfect union of science and faith. So along the nave, the floor mosaics form intricate geometric designs, inviting you to walk as if it was through a pattern of the cosmos. Every symbol, every proportion was chosen with meaning, and numbers drawn from scriptures and geometry. So it was quite a feature. And of course, then there's the facade, which was added later, um, and it was almost like a dialogue between color and form. Um, from the close up, the marble um, is it shimmers with precision, and from the distance, the blur softly in the Florentine light. Leonardo would have loved that, but of course, the facade is from the 16th century, I believe, and Leonardo was long gone by then. Uh, so the facade was supposed to lift the entire church, and to remind to those who enter that the divine is not far away, but woven into the light and the stone. And even the sculptures outside follow the rhythm of shadow. And if you notice, like every recess, every sculpture outside is was carved not only to show the form, but to capture the way light would fall through the day. The facade is like a musical score, basically. Oh, it's light and dark and harmony and contrast. So, and then you have the campanile, which is the church bell tower, which was designed by Giotto. He is the famous guy that invented the perspective, the beginning of perspective, and it really glows. And at the end of the video, I'm gonna make you listen to the bells because I recorded them while I was standing there. Um, and it's quite interesting. You can go up and see the entire city. That is quite something to do when you are in Florence. Let's talk about a little bit about the dome of of Brunelleschi. So the dome of Brunelleschi was actually he Filippo Brunelleschi was a clockmaker in Florence. He wasn't an architect originally, and he was a goldsmith and a clockmaker, and he won the they were competing to complete this dome, and everybody said that it cannot be done unless they build an enormous um, structure as a scaffolding in order to keep this dome together while they were building it. Well, somehow um, he had an idea that could actually work, and he said that he can build this without any scaffolding, which was absolutely impossible for that time. But he actually did, and the idea was to do a double dome, one into the other, and using a herringbone structure, the two domes will hold each other together. And he was able to complete this in a very short period of time. But he was very secretive about this plan because he didn't want people to know what he was up to, and everybody would probably not believe this idea was possible. But he did it, and actually, it's standing there today, and it was incredibly, incredibly interesting. Um, Never done before. And this what I'm painting right now here is the main Rosone from the facade, and the facade is an entire mosaic of statues and marble, and it was built by an architect called Emilio de Fabris much later. So the facade of the dome was completely bare. There was just stone. In fact, there is another church in Florence, which is the church of San Lorenzo, which has the same facade. It looks quite weird and comical because there's absolutely nothing, just stones on it, and it doesn't even look very orderly. It's just stones that are supposed to have a facade, but the Church of San Lorenzo doesn't have a facade, while the Duomo, this one, um, got a facade finally. And at the center is this like a heart of flower. It's called the Rosone, and it's supposed to get the light inside. And the Rosone was designed by Lorenzo Ghiberti, and he is the same guy who also designed the Gates of Paradise and the Baptistry, and he was competing with the Brunelleschi for the for the baptistry doors, and Brunelleschi won. But Brunelleschi said, I'm too busy. I'm just going to leave you the doors, and Ghiberti got the commission to do the doors. But otherwise, um, Brunelleschi would have been the door guy too. It was quite competitive at that time, I guess. So the Rosona is really nice, and when the light passes through, you can really see the glass shining through. This is the church bells that you can hear in the background. Um, yeah, I recorded them because they were really, really beautiful, and they're quite stunning to listen to. So this is the finished painting. I'm really happy with it, how it turned out. There is a couple of mistakes that I don't like, but overall, I'm happy with it. And we didn't talk about those houses next to it, but that's okay. We're gonna have more talks about shadows in the dark alleys of Florence because there's lots of light that needs to be explained and shadows that need to be explained, especially if you have narrow streets. Um, yeah, there's we're gonna have more videos about those shadows. And this is the finished watercolor. Thank you so much for watching, and you will make me very happy if you like and subscribe to my channel. That will definitely make